So it's time to talk. Time to talk Halloweeny.
Halloweeny?
Halloweeny. This topic. You've kind of got the biggest idea of what you've got the vision for this topic.
Yeah.
It's like you're the voice, except you're the vision.
I can steer it.
And I'm gonna try and understand it.
Yeah. So last week, when we were deciding what should we do this week prior to this episode, I looked ahead and I was like, well, it's gonna be Halloween roughly when this episode comes out. Why don't we try and do a little scary little Halloweeny thingy, for the to celebrate it. As for the video viewers can notice, there are spiders attached to the wall behind me.
I literally didn't see those at all until you pointed them out.
There's a little skeleton, which is much harder to see than I expected.
Yeah. Yep.
The light behind it is completely disguising it. But I know that Kerry doesn't like scary games. And so I peer pressured you into playing a scary game. And you did it, which I'm glad about. I'm glad and happy that you have done that.
Oh man, you would have been so upset if I didn't.
Yeah. So I'm glad you did.
I mean, I am too. I had a good time yesterday.
Yeah. And so the game you played was Resident Evil 8. And I was thinking,
I was tossing up between 2 and 8 in the end, but I think I've seen more of 2 overall.
I also think 2 is scary, but it's not like 8 has horror moments, whereas 2 is just like intense.
Yeah, and like that over the shoulder, that sort of Resident Evil 4 style that they made it be when they remade it, is much more actiony than something like Resident Evil 7 or 8, which feels like it's much more inspired by PT than anything else.
Yeah, like it's all claustrophobic, and it being in first person, and it being like just genuinely like a lot slower in terms of its combat. Makes it a bit more intense that way. But when you said you were playing Resident Evil 8, I was very excited, and then you decided to stream a bunch of it. How was the first? We're going to go into some first and second big chunks of Resident Evil 8. Spoilers.
4-ish hours or so.
Yeah. How did you feel while doing the castle section, the vampire section of Resident Evil 8, Kerry?
How did I feel? It was interesting. I feel like I understood the section mechanically really quickly.
Yeah.
To the point where I wasn't too worried as soon as the whole thing with the castle is you're walking around, you're like, oh, this is scary. And it's like, oh, here's Lady Domitresque, as her name is said, apparently. And like, she's tall and like, I don't know, I'm not meant to be there, so she's a bit annoyed with me. And her 3 daughters, who are all made out of bugs for some reason. Because Resident Evil. And once you like get introduced to them, once you find them, they start chasing you. And you'll be like walking through the main area of the castle, and it'll be like, oh, one of them will like float down in front of you and appear and be like, oh, I'm gonna eat your flesh because I'm a horny vampire lady and I'm so gonna kill you right now.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly it's like, oh, I'm gonna run the other way, and they don't actually give chase for that long.
Yeah, like they give chase in certain rooms, but they're vampires, they can't go out into the sun, and it is daytime, and
totally.
There are some like areas that they just can't get through.
And so it would be that I would run into one and be like, I either need to get there, so I'm going to run back and wait for you to come towards me, and then I'm going to run around you and go through where I was trying to get to. Or maybe I don't know where I'm meant to be. Let me pause the game and look at my map, plan my route, and then unpause the game and go there immediately, which was usually where I needed to go, which usually meant that they left me alone.
Yeah. It's a pretty well-designed section in terms of like, it's like a pretty well-paced like escape room.
Yeah, definitely. I think it feels a bit less linear than it actually is, but there are so many doors that are locked that like you pretty quickly go, I tried that, I can't get through there, or oh, there's a symbol on my map because this has got a certain lock. I just got that key. I'll go there next. Yeah. Oh, I tried to go there and it's locked on this side, so I have to go in through the other building. Oh, Lady D's at the top of the stairs in this building. That's really scary.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest scares I had in that section, in the castle specifically, were relating to I quote unquote jump scares, right?
Yeah.
Like sudden moments that I wasn't expecting. Like
sure.
When you're in the sort of dungeon bit, there's times where there are monsters that jump up out of a pool of blood, and other times where something falls from the ceiling, or
when she cuts your
like
hand
I said
off.
before. Oh yeah, when you go to open there's a handle and you get it like 90% of the way there, and it's just sliced off instantly, and you have to run away from it and circle back to it.
Yeah, pick up your hand and keep going.
And then reattach it on the elevator, which miraculously reattaches the sleeve to itself too. It fixes your clothes.
Yeah, it's good, right?
It's so strange.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that it's like a canonized healing though. Like that he can sustain this much damage is part of the canon. It's not just like he's got plot armor. It's like, no, he can heal a lot.
Yeah.
Because of his history in Resident Evil 7, and also the green juice you make is quite potent.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that's cool. I really like that.
And so you were playing this on stream.
Yes.
Which I said that was easy mode.
Yeah, you said I was cheating a little bit, yeah.
Which I don't necessarily like, like I was poking fun a little bit. But it does make it, I think, a bit more palatable. A little bit less scary. You're joking around. You got chat going. You got a camera on you, and you have something to take away just how scary everything might be.
Totally.
Which is also how you played Soma. It's
the only way I played Soma.
Yeah, and also how you played Echoes
Soma
of the Eye.
Yes, Jeremy. I really struggled with Echoes of the Eye.
Mm-hmm.
When we finished playing last night. So I played up until the end of Castle Dimitrescu last night on stream, and then we went away. We watched you play a bit of Scorn, which we'll get to a bit later.
Yeah,
and on your stream, and then Sam and I circled back and we played through the Dollhouse, the Beneviento, section on our own, but. Yeah, when we finished that section, Sam was like, what's the out of 10? How scary was that? And I said, strong 6 or 7 out of 10. And Sam was like, oh, what would be a 10? I was like, Soma was pretty scary. And they're like, I don't think that was a 10. And I was like, oh no, Outer Wilds. For me, that was a 10. And which is weird because it's not gory. It's not like even like existential horror. I mean, it's kind of tragic in a way that many parts of that game are, but that's not the scary part. But man, they don't even fucked me up.
Yeah, they don't even like kill you in that game. It's just like it's just a short punishment.
Yeah, but it fucked me up so much.
Yeah, and so then you played the Dollhouse section, the Silent Hill section, the PT section.
Yeah. The section was
8.
Interesting. And because it starts folding in like hallucinations of Ethan's wife into the fold as well, which is because we just saw her get shot at the start of the game. Spoilers. And right from the start, it's very funny. I've watched, like, when that game came out, it was not that long after the next gen started, right? It was within 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I was watching graphics comparisons, and they would show parts of the opening 10 minutes, which is really not very long, before your wife gets shot, your baby gets stolen, and you get taken somewhere else, and you wake up in a ditch at the outskirts of this village. And I'm like, wow, this seems like a lot to happen, and it's a lot that they show you too, but it's so clear that something is off as soon as you start the game. Like, there's so much that they're not telling you.
Yes.
It's like, okay, something's wrong here.
Yeah. So how was the Dollhouse?
How was the Dollhouse? It was It was interesting. It was interesting.
And I just want to be very clear. I pushed for Kerry to play this off stream later in the night on the big projector.
Yeah, definitely. And like I think you're right too. I also think that I remember from like 18 months ago when you and June played this and spoke about it on the podcast, how much you spoke about the dollhouse being the one that fucked you guys up the most.
Yeah.
And so I was expecting a lot, I think. And I think when we finished the house, we walked out, Sam was like, how was that? What do you reckon? I'm like, that was pretty intense, but I think it was better than I was expecting. And I think what made it really, I'm going in there with such a not a game developer mindset, but an experienced mindset.
Yep.
That when I go in and I see these cupboards, I open it and it's like, oh, weird, there's nothing in there. And Sam says, can you go in? And I can. I'm like, oh no. There's a hiding mechanic that I have to use.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? And I start thinking of Amnesia, and I start thinking of Soma in other ways, and those kind of hide and seek sections, which I'm really not a fan of, or like the Five Nights at Freddy's sections where you're like when you're not just a person in a room where you're actually on foot. And really, I think I only had to use one of those hiding sections one time. There was only one time I had to actually use it, and then I used it. And the thing came and went away, and when I came back, it was just nowhere to be found, and I got to go where I wanted to. And other times, I could just run away if I got confronted and go the second route.
Yeah.
But the tension and the not knowing what was about to happen before any monsters turn up in that house was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You open the door and you walk in. And it's a pretty well-kept front few rooms in the house. In a kind of there's a doll over there, that's kind of creepy, and like, there's just a bucket of apples over there, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
In like, thematic with the village, but it's quite an ornate house. It's well kept compared to everything else. And Sam was like, "Oh, this is weird because I like this. I've walked in here and I'm finding it quite homely." Sam specifically. And then you go further and the wallpaper starts peeling, and then there's just an old service elevator in the back of the room, and it goes down.
Yeah.
And like it gets more and more messed up, and then you walk into the infirmary and there's a wooden mannequin version of your dead wife, and you start like popping off its limbs to get like keys and clues, and you have to find tweezers to pull something out of her mouth. And
so Sam was DMing me.
There's a well in the basement, and
So Sam was DMing me while you were playing, and they were like, so we got up to the dollhouse, but we're only up to the start where the house actually looks fucking cool. Like, this house is my vibe. And then 2 minutes later, they go, oh no. And then, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
It goes quite sour quite quickly.
Yeah, it does. A lot of... In classic fashion, I think, though, when you're playing a game like this, or you're being introduced to a new area or something like that, it happens in a way that there's a lot of tension and build up before anything actually happens, and you just don't know when the shoe's gonna drop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the shoe does eventually drop, and the big, like, bear-sized fetus starts crawling around in the basement. Shoes drop, surely.
I don't know. If I don't know. I'm not well versed enough to know.
The shoe falls. The penny flies.
The shoe fits
above
Kerry.
The farthing. Oh, the shoe fits. That's a good point. So the bear-sized fetus starts crawling around and screaming at you.
Yeah. Crying at you.
Yeah, it's quite confronting. Because it's like in a red corridor, so you have to run around, and by this time you've explored basically the whole basement, and you're starting to get the run around of like, go here to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that, and it's like, oh, there's a doll in the corner of the room, and then you come back, it's like, oh, the doll's gone. That's really scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, once the fetus was scary, But yeah, there was only one section where I had to hide. And then it came and we waited and we watched, and it was loud and slick and thumping around.
Yeah.
And then we walk outside and it's left blood everywhere. It's so gross.
Yes.
And I kept doing this thing where I kept trying to run with L1, which I think is the run button in Last of Us.
Right.
But it's your guard button in Resident Evil. So Ethan keeps like throwing up his hands when I keep trying to make him run.
Oh, it's a pretty horrific thing. He doesn't want to watch.
Oh my god.
Anyway, so you get to the dolls. How are the dolls?
The dolls were interesting. It was very quick. You go back upstairs and there's way more like dolls in that house, and then the main like bride doll called like Angie, I think.
Yeah.
Who's like screaming at you and wants to do a riddle, and you have to run around this top floor, which isn't too big, find her 3 times while all the other dolls in the house start giggling
and
more
vibrating
and more, and vibrating, oscillating. Their heads start going like in a really uncanny way, and it's the kind of thing of like, oh, this sucks. I gotta run. I gotta find her. I gotta find her quick. I gotta go. We didn't fail. I didn't really feel like I was in that much danger, and then it was over. It was over really quickly. I think it took us less than an hour to do the whole section.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it was good in the end, but something my impression at the end of the day of this game was that it did feel a bit like a campy action game at its core.
Yeah. I've described it many times as a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
As a good thing. That is a positive way I'm describing it. It is.
That's what it's going for.
It's fun.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, like when I played like that dollhouse section, like the 2 things that really scared me the most was being in the room with the mannequin that you have to take apart. Only because I was just so unsure that whole time that thing wasn't going to get up and try and kill me.
Oh, totally. And like there were a lot of really long corridors between it and where you had to go each time, and it was like, oh, you're stuck for things to do. Maybe walk back down this really long corridor again. And I was like, I don't want to.
Yeah. That and like the first time, like every doll in the house started to vibrate as they would attack me. Like that was fun. Like, you know, you get over that quite quickly because it's like it's the same thing every time. But like the first time you see all those fucking things and they start shaking and just like more and more aggressively, it was like, like fucking one fear. Like I need to get the hell out of here. So you played that is the scariest part of the game. Like there are still scary parts in that game. But that is the most horror section. Like there's no combat, all that stuff, right? Comparing it to Soma and comparing it to Echoes of the Eye, Outer Wilds, are those the only other horror games you've played? Did you ever play Amnesia, Cry of Fear?
I did play Amnesia. Sam and I played that a bit together. We didn't get that far. We got like an hour and a half, 2 hours in, and we took a break at that point because that's like, you know, a decent chunk of time. And I think we played it one more time, but we never really went back. We never really felt that compelled to go back. I don't think Sam and I got that much out of like both of us sitting by the computer with me on the keyboard and also
Amnesia came out at a very different time.
Yes, it did. It did. And so we just just kind of drifted away from that plan.
Yeah.
Gradually. So it was, but that was scary. Soma is definitely the one I've played the most of that is like that. And I really enjoyed it in a way, but like not because of those scary sections. I think you remember when you get like thrown into that like subway and you got to crawl around and where there's like red lights.
Yeah.
And you got to crawl in some of the vents that are like, you know, like 20 centimeters tall and you could fit in them for some reason. And like there's some really spooky shit, but and also like the creature in the sunken ship, like, and like all the random stuff towards the end. Like it's a really intense game, but it's really interesting. Like philosophically and like psychologically.
Like narratively, that game is like really quite good.
Yeah, and like conceptually, the things that you're dealing with, this organic matter that's trying to be digital, that's trying to digitize and has become corrupted, like physically and biologically and like technologically, is quite fascinating.
So then, how come with the Echoes of the Eye, what paralyzed you while playing that game?
I don't know what it was so much about that. I think because when you did get caught in Echoes of the Eye, it was quite shocking every time. Like the visual and audio stimulus each time you get caught in Echoes of the Eye was so intense. Like there's kind of like a shrieking that happens. The movement of the creatures that catch you is so uncanny and quite intimidating. They're very tall and they move so fast and you can't see them until you can. And then they are right there, right in your face. There's something about that really fucks me up. Like sometimes I'll just be like, oh yeah, I remember Echoes of the Eye. And then I remember that time where there's a moment where you can turn all the lights out in the village. And then you hear all of the inhabitants of the village go like, Rah! and you hear all of their elevators go down because they start protecting this one area. It's like, that's where I need to go though.
I need to get there.
Like there's such a sense of dread in that game, in a way that I think is too much. It was too much for me, and for others it probably isn't. It's not bloody, it's not horror, so it's fine. But I found them so intimidating, every time. Whereas this, like, I kind of once I saw the bear sized fetus baby, it's kind of like I understood it to that point, and I'm like, okay, you're not that fast. I'm gonna walk you around this side of the desk, and then I'm gonna run around the other way. Like I just kind of understood. These I understood, but I was scared of them. I didn't. Like, I thought they were beautiful creatures that I was terrified by.
Yeah.
It was... And the other thing is they really sold my my fear of them prior to confronting them one-to-one, because you see the slides of how they came to be in the solar system and how things ended up the way they were on the space station.
And it's just like a tragic story.
So tragic, right? But there's this moment where they're quite beautiful creatures and they have this beautiful civilization. Spoilers for Echoes of the Eye. I really recommend you play it if you haven't yet. I'm going to keep going a bit more detail. But yeah, then there's that moment where they're like, "Oh, we spent everything to come here, and it was for nothing."
Yeah.
And you see them turn on the slides, and the music plays, and that is absolutely haunting. Like those slides of them being filled with unmitigated rage for the circumstances, for misunderstanding what they thought was a benevolent sign, and being so upset at what has happened. Like that sets the stage, that sets the scene for when you do finally meet them. So yeah, I can't say, I don't think it is going to be nearly anyone else's like scariest thing who has played all of those games. But yeah, for me, it messes me up.
Now that you've done, like, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, it's a different kind of horror. In terms of, it is not about violence, and it is not about, it is not even really about fear of the unknown. It's almost like a fear of the dark. Which it's a different fear. It's almost like a more childlike fear. And I think like the style of that game plays into it a bit more. With like its general art direction, and its more simplicity in its graphics. In the sense that it's not a realistic looking game like Resident Evil is. But a lot of horror games do go for realism often because they want to capture something that could be realistically happening to you. With outliers, I guess like the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise is an outlier where that game doesn't look realistic, but that game is still very scary. A lot of it is jump scares, but like the actual like intensity of that game inside of its own style. And similar, I guess, to like Hello Neighbor, where like that game is like it's pretty freaky and it's cartoony, but it's because it is all within this universe. And I think both of those games also definitely play into childhood fear type scenarios. Would you be, now that you have experienced Soma, which you quite liked, even though it was quite scary, and Resident Evil, that is, a horror action game, would you be more interested in going to some more generic-ish horror games like, I'm not sure what they would be, like maybe like Phasmophobia or Dead by Daylight or
oh yeah, those multiplayer shenanigans ones are interesting, right? Because like there's always
it's a different
multiplayer
layer
to sort of take the edge off a bit.
Yeah.
Well, theoretically, there's some hilarious clips of Phasmophobia of people freaking the hell out.
Sure, but like even something maybe like The Evil Within 2 or some of the other games of that style, like A Plague Tale, perhaps.
So interestingly enough, I actually played the first 2 hours of both Plague Tale games a couple of weeks ago for work.
I know they're more stealth games than they are horror games, but
yeah, I would equate them more to like they're much more similar to like a Last of Us game than anything else. It's kind of like instead of modern day zombies, it's medieval plague.
Yeah, right.
And so you come up against villages where society's falling and they're unhappy, and so it's the kind of thing of like, oh, are we more afraid of the rats or are we more afraid of the people? And like it's definitely the rats. But yeah, I think from playing yesterday, I'm definitely sold on trying more Resident Evil, which is an idea I've been kicking around for ages anyway.
Yeah.
But 8 did a great job of selling me on trying more Resident Evil.
I'm curious how you'll go with 7. 7 is more scary.
That's what I've heard. That's what I thought. But other games, I don't know, man. Like,
PT.
Like if I'm just sitting there on my own, like it's not like I could just go like, oh, I haven't played enough of Into the Breach. I should try that. And then like that's one Saturday afternoon, and then like I've got the next day free as well, and it's Sunday afternoon, and I'm like, oh, you know what I feel like doing? I feel like pissing my pants. Give me like, you know what I mean? Like it's not something I gravitate towards. It's not it can be fun, and it is a unique style of storytelling and engaging with a story.
So then maybe maybe a different question, just to interrupt you quickly, is are you now maybe going to be more interested in a horror game that you might not have been in the past because it was a horror game? If a game comes around that is now more on the scary side, which might have initially put you off, is that now less of a barrier to entry now that you know?
Like if people are talking about like a Game of the Year contender, that is something like that.
Sure, yeah. Are you now more interested in like the new Silent Hill, not the remake of 2, but like, whatever the next one is going to be, which is probably going to be like a first-person game?
Honestly, no. No, Silent Hill's never grabbed me, and this presentation happened this last week where they announced 800 things for it, and I didn't even bother looking up a recap. I was just like, I heard they announced a lot of stuff. And that was about as much as my interest was. Is
that because of Silent Hill, or is that because it's like the genre that you don't play?
Oh, both, I think. It's like, right. Foggy Town is mystery, is spooky, Pyramid Head sword, spooky. I'm like,
yeah, right.
It just doesn't do much for me, I guess.
Right.
Like, so yesterday you were playing Scorn. And I was glad I was watching you play it, because I found the gameplay to be... When I was watching it, I was like, I don't think I'd enjoy playing this. But, like, even just looking at it, it was like, it's interesting, and I want to see more about it, which I got to do by watching your stream. But, like, this is my impressions when I see it for the first time. It's like, I want to see more about it. But not enough to really invest in it, either time or energy-wise. Like, especially not money.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, like, Game Pass, but like, yeah,
Game Pass and all that, yeah.
Yeah, like we'll go into Scorn later when we go into what I've been playing, because like I initially was going to include that in my horror game in this segment, is in like the horror game segment, but as I played it, like Scorn is not a horror game. In that same regard, it is a body horror game, but it is not a scary horror game. Yeah. But we'll get there. But yeah, okay, that's like interesting. Like I kind of hoped that you would be more keen to do more horror because of this experience. But look, I mean, at the very least, you're more keen to do more Resident Evil, which is good.
Yeah, totally. And like, I feel like I wanted to be more keen on it too. Honestly, like I wanted to come out enjoying it, and like I think I might. If a horror game came up while we were doing a game club or something like that, if it came up again, I'd be more down for it. But, that was the thing that got me playing Soma in the first place. Like, it's not like that kept me away from it.
Yeah. Well, perhaps an adjacent question. Are you now more interested in watching horror films or TV shows that are more directly scary?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm about the same on those, in that I know they can get really fucked up. Like either like super violent or super like troubling, and it just doesn't excite me.
I mean, there are non-fucked up and troubling horror films. There are ones that are just plain scary.
Yeah, it really doesn't do it for me. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Let me ask you this one thing. Thank you for getting that.
Yeah.
What is it about something like a Phasmophobia or Outlast or, games of this ilk, or what you thought Scorn might be? What is it about it that does entice you?
So I'm still getting into horror, because I've avoided it for a long time as well, because I did not enjoy it. But when I pushed myself, there was a level of it. It's the PUBG conundrum, right? It's the chasing that that intense moment of like overcoming, but also just like the adrenaline, the excitement, and the emotional. It just genuinely making me feel a really intense emotion, whether it is dread, or whether it is fear, or whether it is like anxiety-ish. Like one of the best films I've seen over the past few years was a film called Prisoners, from Villeneuve, which has got Hugh Jackman, and it's got Jake Gyllenhaal, and it was like a really intense thriller that was like a very genuinely quite fucked up story, but the thriller aspect of it was so dread inducing that I was gripped. It was gripping.
Yeah.
That a lot of the time it's like stakes, and it's emotion, and it's when you connect with characters and they feel an emotion that is genuine, you feel that emotion as well, and that's really exciting.
Right.
And horror can do that really beautifully sometimes, without it. Like, sometimes it's manipulative, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is sometimes it can be done in a really beautiful, genuine way. I'm not super here for watching the Paranormal Activities, for example. But okay. I would be more keen to watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or Malignant, or I watched The Babadook a couple of years ago, and that movie was fucking terrifying. I cannot tell you how absolutely dreadfully terrifying it was. One, because the ghost demon thing in that movie was dreadfully scary, and the other thing was the themes in that film were really intense and really, really personal themes. Right. And it came together in this wonderful spectacle of pure terror. That while I don't particularly want to watch that film again because of how intense it was, I'm glad that I've seen it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Soma at the end of the day. Although I do think about going back to it because I think it's a bit more spread out. You know, it's got its lulls and its ebbs and flows, rather than something that just builds for 2 hours.
Yeah, like the Babadook was too scary for me at that moment, I guess, to the point that like going back would does scare me to go back and watch it again. But yeah, like Soma, I really enjoyed the frights. The lulls were great, but the frights were these are well earned frights.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's well worn territory, but like, what is it about us that makes us want to do this?
Oh, you know,
that makes us want to make these. That makes us want to watch them for enjoyment. You know,
it's just the emotional desire to be challenged and excited, right? Like horror is a challenging genre at times, like sometimes it makes you confront things you don't want to confront, what is behind that door? Like, I don't know, and that scares the living daylights out of you sometimes. It's why I didn't get very far in Resident Evil 7, and I want to go back and do it because there was a door that I just did not want to go to.
Oh man.
And because there was something on the other side, and when I got really close, that something stopped making sound, and I gave the controller to June, and they gave the controller back to me, and so we turned off the PlayStation.
Yeah, there's so many sounds in that game. There's so many you're in a hut and you don't know whether there's something on the roof or something beside you or something under you, and there's just sounds, and it's like crashing or like a growl or rubble or like a door closing. There's always something happening in whatever room you're in next to the room that you're in.
Yep, always.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, do you feel we thoroughly dissected my brain? Do you think we understand now?
I reckon so.
That's impressive. I didn't know if we'd get there. Yeah. It was yeah, I am keen to get back to more Resident Evil.
It's great. It's like a really great game.
Yeah. I'll definitely be streaming more of it. Sam's in the chat saying, was it in Soma where the monster disappeared in front of you and you stopped being scared of it? Yes, Sam. There was a glitch in Soma where I watched the monster despawn, where I shouldn't have been able to see it, and I watched it disappear. And all of a sudden I understood how the monster worked mechanically, and I could use that to my advantage because I was like, oh, you get close, run away, disappear for a few seconds to give me some breathing room, and then you come back to scare me again.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can work with that.
Yeah.
Also, it made me laugh my ass off when it happened because it was so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Sam. Like the unknown is a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, then how do you describe the Echoes of the Eye, where it's just terrifying, and I know what they are, and I'm just terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna kick it to a break now. So stick with us, everyone who's in chat, and we can.